Unless this
All
is
good.
purgatory and you're actually dead. We're just going to keep getting to the end of the recording and be like, oh, it didn't record. We'll have to start again. So, hello and welcome to All Four Quarters, your one stop shop for news, views, and overreactions to all things NFL. It's been a week of ass kickings, which thankfully means the reviews were a little bit easier to write this week. So, hey, we got Connor here and we got Sean.
Uh,
How are we getting on, Sean? How's all with yourself since you returned home from the big smoke?
yeah, it was good. We had a good weekend. Saw Friends the musical, which is certainly something that fans of Friends would enjoy. Being not a particularly huge fan of musicals or as hardcore a fan of Friends as some of the people in the audience, did not maybe as enjoy it as much as other people, but it was entertaining. And then we did a bit of Dublining, and we saw you guys. Well, I we
Hmm.
saw you. We didn't see your wife.
Yeah, my wife was
Uh,
out running the marathon at the time, so
but that was good. And then I did some motorway driving on the way back, which is it's one of those things where because you're trying to maintain concentration for like 2 hours, it really
mhm.
does just kind of wear you out. But yeah, no mistakes, no terrible crashes. So yeah,
Unless this
all
is
good.
purgatory and you're actually dead. We're just going to keep getting to the end of the recording and be like, oh, it didn't record. We'll have to start again. At least that road's a little bit better. The motorway down to Cork, like the first half is very boring, and then because it's the same road as you take down to Limerick, but the rest of the Limerick and then on through to Kerry Road is the most boring road in the world. Like the Cork one at least gets pretty as you get down towards Cork a little bit. Like you get some nice bits of mountains and stuff, which is good. But
Mm.
yeah, like you could very easily fall asleep on the motorway down to Limerick. It's incredibly boring. Like except I suppose you get to stop and meet the Obamas en route. The Barack Obama Plaza is there.
Yeah, we were annoyed. We couldn't because my wife Sarah's never been. Well, I've never been there either. But she was like, I was like, I saw a sign for Barack Obama Plaza. I was like, oh, we go there, and I looked it up and like, no, it's
No, it's after
after
the
after
turn
the
off.
turn off,
Yeah, yeah.
bastards.
You'd
Yeah,
have to go down to Limerick and then head south from Limerick if you wanted
yeah,
to
and
do that,
then
which is
Jesus, yeah, you wouldn't
adds
want to
about
do
an
that.
extra hour to your trip, I think.
Plus, you have to go on the Limerick Cork Road,
Yeah.
which is just the
Look,
worst
'cause
road
you
in the
can ring
country.
road it now. You don't really have to go into it, so it's not too bad. But Limerick's a fine spot these days. I was down there at a gig last year, I want to say. It was very nice. It's gotten a lot more energetic and artsy now than it used to be.
Right, very good.
Yes, it's doing well. Yeah, nothing too wild here. Getting a new car, well, a second-hand car, but a new to me car, and was meant to be picking that up today, but unfortunately, it won't be ready till tomorrow, and I have to go to the dreaded Frankfurt for work tomorrow. So I'm off to Germany for the next few days. So I'll pick the car up on Saturday, and then I won't be with you next week, dear listeners, because I am going to be on holidays out in the wilds of the west of Ireland, where I doubt the internet connection would hold up. So there will be an episode. We're not sure if it'll just be Sean or Sean and friends, but we'll figure it out. But yeah, no, other than that, nothing too wild or crazy really on our side. You know yourself, saw yourself over the weekend, cheered the wife on at the marathon, etc. It was good fun. It's been an interesting week of football, Sean. As I said at the intro there's a lot of one-sided games this week. A lot of one-sided games. One really surprising, big one that we'll talk about at the top of the game reviews, and there hasn't been a ton of news this week either because we're kind of in the quiet start of the week period. So this week is basically the trade deadline. So teams are going to have to, if they wanted to make changes to their rosters, if they want to trade players or acquire players, they're going to have to do that now. If they get rid of someone after this, they're just cut and they go to waivers and then can sign with whoever they want if they clear waivers. So we will be talking at the end of the news a little bit about the trade deadline, some people who we think might be traded, where might be good fits for them, or what certain teams should go after. But I suppose we'll just zip through a few bits of the news beforehand. We haven't had too much controversy or too much crime this week, which is, impressive, good stuff. Apart from, I suppose there was a discussion about some refereeing stuff that people weren't happy about, and also I suppose there was the I think it was the first time I've seen in a regular season game the digital measurement for ball positioning, and it was in Kansas City Chiefs' favor. Ooh, that gets the internet going. But I do actually think it was wrong. I do think it was probably a first down. But yeah, just those are the big controversial stuff, but nothing too major. But because it's trade season, teams are playing things close to the vest. They're not talking about injuries too much. I suppose there was one controversial element that might cause some issues, Sean. Were you following the injury designation news coming out of the Ravens this week?
I heard that there was some Lamar controversy going on,
Yeah. So
where he was.
essentially, they said that on Friday practice he was a full participant, and they're mandated to give reports on these things because it feeds into a lot of different things, not least, gambling and spreads and all that kind of stuff. So they said he was a full participant and then came back a day later and downgraded it and said, actually, we did that wrong. He should have been a limited participant. He was only running with the scout team or something like that. And then obviously, inevitably, he didn't play. I think it's getting such a spotlight, Sean, on it. One, because look, it is taking the piss. These are like requirements of every team that every team has to do, and you can give yourself an edge by having people, not knowing who they're preparing for and things like that. I don't think that's too major here. I think the reason this got into the news so much is because there was a little bit of controversy in the States in this past week about gambling and professional sports, particularly the NBA. And a lot of people got caught out being involved in this and it causing problems. And yeah, basically, given that this news will impact how people are betting on games, what lines Vegas and other sports books are giving, and so on, and allows people who would have knowledge from inside the building and so on, even though they're not meant to be gambling, to know that's why there's a problem. Now, I didn't realize how serious this was until reports started to come out where they were saying that, oh, we could be talking about like not just fines but suspensions and loss of draft picks for this because this
Oh.
is that level of like essentially there's a requirement for providing certain information to the league and to other teams, and they just broke that entirely.
Yeah, I mean it's one of these things. It's kind of weird, right? So for years, decades, pro sports in America was very much trying to keep betting at arm's length because gambling was illegal in most of America, and they just kind of dumped it all in Vegas, and they didn't really want anything to do with it. And then suddenly, there's been this mad embrace of it in a very big way, and things like this are a manifestation of an importance for gambling or fantasy, etc., in the sport, which you wouldn't really see in Europe. I mean, this is the kind of thing where if you did this, if this was a requirement in soccer or something, I mean, the clubs just wouldn't do it. I mean, it's very odd that you would have this kind of level of requirement for players injuries or how they're training or whatever, and that you can the punishments can be so severe if you don't meet it. So I do find it a little bit odd as a thing that happens. But that said, if those are the rules and you're deliberately screwing with the rules in such a way as I don't know where the Ravens trying to give themselves an edge by making the Bears think that Lamar was going to play, or whether it was a genuine error or something like that. But it, you know, it's in everyone's interest, I guess, to just obey the rules. These kind of situations, don't try and screw it. But the very fact of the rules' existence, I think, says something about
Yeah,
the importance of gambling in American sports culture. That is not a good thing,
yeah,
and
yeah.
certainly not something that should be encouraged.
I did like John Harbaugh. I'm just after our last episode, so I'm just going to refer to him as their Harbaugh. John Harbaugh was saying that oh, like it was an honest mistake. It was just a mistake, and then he like made it. He in the middle of the press conference. It's an honest mistake. Like I had nothing to do with it. It's not me. Like just want to underline it wasn't me, but I do believe it was an honest mistake. Like he's trying to distance himself. It was quite funny. We'll move on to some transactions that have happened. So New England have extended their cornerback slash kick returner Marcus Jones. He's getting a 3-year extension. Solid enough. Lock him up. They're happy with what he's doing. You're happy with him, Sean?
Yeah, I think he's so he was kind of originally 2022ish. He was kind of mostly just a punt returner or kick returner, and he was all pro. I mean, he was doing quite well. They're trying to establish him, or he's trying to establish himself as like a genuine kind of slot corner as
Yeah,
part of a kind of young advancing secondary. So he's in his best season. Things are looking quite good. He's got a good relationship with Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis, kind of in that backfield. So I think it's definitely a sign of building forward. You can lock these young guys down and try and keep a core in that secondary together for a few years, and things will go well. So I'm happy with it, and I'm interested to see how this guy evolves as a player because I don't think we've fully seen what he's capable of. But I think if this year is any indication, he definitely is a quality player to have in that backfield.
Yeah, no, very good. The first of the trades came through, so the Titans, who we mentioned last week, are almost certainly going to be a seller in this market. They've traded cornerback Roger McCreary to the Rams. They're doing a pick swap, fifth round, sixth round. Now, I believe the Rams actually have the Titans' fifth round pick already. So the trade is for the top fifth round pick that the Rams hold at the draft for the Titans' bottom sixth round pick. So that's almost certainly going to be the Titans' pick coming back to them. And for the Rams, the Titans, I think, have like four picks in the sixth round or something. So it'll be a pretty low down one. Like, it makes sense, get a bit of depth there. It's not like it's going to do anything massively different. McCreary is kind of similar to what they already have at the cornerback position. Like, he's not massively tall. He's, he's fine. Like, and workable, and this is a good value pick up, I think, for the price. But like, yeah, like it's just kind of it's a roster expansion, not a game changer. But I would say that's not the only one we're going to have because the Titans did also come out to the media and say they are looking at trading players, but not all their players. And they mentioned two players that they were not going to trade. Can you guess who they were, Sean?
Well, I don't know. Do they need to say they're not going to trade Cam Ward? I would hope.
Now, see, that's where I was going. So Cam Ward was one of the two players they named, and
Jesus
I said I
Christ.
didn't think you'd need to go out to the media and say, yeah, this first overall pick that we picked up and have invested a lot in, we're not giving up on him after 7 games. Strong message from the
Oh
Titans, I
God.
suppose.
Jesus.
But yeah, they just
But
can't
that
do.
does mean they actually only have two players that they
Yeah,
actually want to hold on to.
yeah, I think it's the defensive tackle. Is it Walker? Travion Walker, is that who it is? Is their other big player? But yeah, so it's just kind of it's an interesting statement to have to make. We had a couple of injuries this week. Panthers offensive lineman Brady Christensen has torn his Achilles. He's gone for the season, and New York Giants running back Can Scadabo dislocated his ankle in the middle of the game.
Tragedy.
It was very sad. Looked very painful. The absolute fucking maniac. Did you see when it happened? He uh, he tried to get his teammates to pick him up so he could walk off the field with his ankle facing the wrong fucking way. Like, Jesus. He's a monster, but he's done for the season.
Yeah. Heart of a lion, but the brain of a
The
much
brain of a
smaller
man who
lion.
does what he does professionally, like I would say, runs headfirst into brick walls for fun. Yeah, no, so Scotto's gone. We had a couple of smaller time injuries. So Ed Oliver has a biceps injury, so he's likely to miss some time. We haven't got any clarity on that just yet, but biceps tend to be one that can be very tricky. Anything serious in there, and that could be the season gone. Denver cornerback Pat Surtain left the game with an injury. There's been radio silence from Denver on what's going on there. And Tutu Atwell has a recurring hamstring injury, so he's gone to IR, so he'll be gone for 4 weeks, but he's expected back this season. So yeah, kind of not the worst week for injuries, but a couple of painful ones. I think Cam Scadabo was obviously a heartbreaker for all of the meme makers out there because he was good crack and really helped amp up that team. Other bit of news, I suppose, New Orleans. They have decided that it's Shook o'clock. So Tyler Shook has now been named the starter. He came into the game in the early in the third quarter, I think, last week. I don't think he looked particularly better than Rattler, but Rattler was having an absolute stinker of a game. So I think, like we talked
I
about this, Rattler seems serviceable. I think he's going. I think he's done enough to guarantee himself like he'll be an in-demand backup anyway for the rest of his career.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing, the kind of the timing and the choices and stuff, it's just bizarre because obviously when they named Rattler as starter at the beginning of the season, you're like, oh, what is this? This is the most obvious tank I've ever seen in my entire life. And then you saw Rattler this season, he's like, he's not actively bad. He's not a world beater, but he's possibly the 18th, 19th best quarterback maybe on his day in the NFL. I mean, they could do worse. And then he has one game where he's not really at the races, and then they go and they name this guy who's probably even worse to the position. Like if like, are they actively tanking, or are they just this incompetent? Because this one, I mean, give the Rattler was establishing himself. I think if you're going to have any faith in him as a quarterback, you got to give him some time. And it's such a bizarre time to make this decision and why you would do it. And as you say, it's not like Tyler Shook has shook the world either. So yeah, very very strange altogether. in a
Yeah,
sense.
I get the idea. I suppose it's, you know, they're probably selling a lot of stuff now at the deadline. We'll talk about that in the trade talk in a minute. And like Rattler's fine, but like I said, I think he's a top end backup, probably not really starter material. So they're probably trying to figure out, do they have a starter in Shook, or do they have two backups? And because that obviously is going to inform how much they need to sell off and so on. I would posit that if that was the case, you should have done it earlier, so you had more than like 2 quarters of tape on the guy, well, 4 days before your trade deadline or whatever. But
Well, this is what I mean about the timing. It's like make this decision in the preseason. Why are you making it in week 8? Like
yeah,
it's just so bizarre.
and like I was looking just to see, like, is it the next couple of games? I like that it's a softer set of games for sure, but like I would have given it one more week and let Rattler deal with the Rams first maybe, because you've got Panthers, Falcons, Dolphins, Buccaneers, Panthers, Titans, Jets, Falcons. So it's not a murderer's row at the end of here, but I would have done one more week and just put him in from the Panthers game, because then you'd get your 8 game sample, and because the Rams have a good pass rush, like, and this kid was holding on to the ball a little bit in what we saw. So I'm not sure the Rams pass rush is where you want to be debuting him as a starter.
Yeah, it's well, it's not like anybody the Saints are going to beat is going to be an easy game for them anyway. So
That's true. That's true. All right, let's take a little look at the trade stuff. So trade deadline is the 4th of November, so Tuesday upcoming. I think it's 4th of November. Um, and basically what it means is, if you want to trade between teams, you can do it up till that point. It used to be about 2 or 3 weeks earlier. It got pushed out. For those who are kind of newer to the sport, the rationale behind having a stop point on the trade is that, like, you don't want teams to just be able to buy a load of players towards the tail end and go on a run. You want teams to stay competitive. So, if someone like the problem is, a year like this year, you can see there's a large strata of teams at the bottom who know they're not competing for the playoffs, who are probably not a year away from it either, and know that this is time to do so. They can sell now, and they can gather up pieces, but they don't want teams who are kind of close to it, or maybe in with a shot, getting to 3 or 4 weeks time and suddenly there being 14 uncompetitive teams in the league. So that's the general rationale. They also do limit other things, like you can only trade draft picks for the next 3 years, I think it is, so that you can't completely mortgage your future and so on. But yeah, so basically what we're talking about when we're looking at trade deadline here now is we're looking at teams who are probably not in the best of positions. Maybe, they've had injuries, or maybe they're just kind of not it's not their year, and they're looking to gather up some draft capital, because then they can get a whole load of new players in the coming year, and they can kind of start fresh. So I mentioned last week a couple of teams here. We got Miami, Jets, Browns, Titans, Raiders, Saints, Giants, Cardinals, Bengals, maybe even the Ravens, depending on how they're feeling inside in the building at this point. All those kind of teams will be looking to sell. You'll also have other teams who might just have too much at a given position. Say, for example, the Seahawks. The Seahawks are doing good and are definitely, not in a we're not going anywhere this season mode, but they have a lot of uh, bodies in their defensive backfield, more than they need, and maybe one or two of them aren't as good a fit for the new schemes that they're running. The idea I have here, Sean, is Tariq Woolen. So Woolen, is good ball skills, good coverage guy, but like he's not working in their system, whereas he probably would work in some other systems. So they will probably, I would imagine they're looking to trade him right now, and there'll be a lot of other teams interested, because a lot of teams would need cornerbacks. So I was going to say, Sean, how about this? How about we'll go back and forth for a couple of players. You pick a guy who you think might be on the trading block. Tell me why it might be a good idea to pick him up, or maybe some landing spots for where we want to be. Or alternatively, if you want to just pick a team and say, I think this team should go after a player at this position, and these are who I think they should be looking at.
yeah, I think I'll go the player route, and I mean there have been a number of names thrown around. I think one of the biggest issues here is that there's certain positions that teams will be trying to pick up. I mean, wide receiver, running back. Maybe edge is a big one. But it's whether or not teams are willing to give up the kind of talent. And looking at the various lists that have been put on the internet about who's going and who won't, the chances thereof. I mean, the first one that really springs to mind, although now that they won a game, maybe not. There might be one is Brees Hall,
Mm,
largely because he's a running back. He's a young running back. He's a very talented running back. The Jets are just not really going anywhere and don't look like they're going anywhere soon. And running back is such a position where an injury or a player falling off a cliff means that there's a number of teams looking at it. I mean, you think about something like the Chargers, maybe,
yeah.
or the Texans would be looking at a Brees Hall guy. As far as I understand, I think he's in a contract year, so it is the kind of situation where they might be the Jets, rather than trying to get into contract negotiations or dumping money on a guy who maybe doesn't want to be there, that they might be willing to make some moves. Although, I mean, it is the kind of situation you want to give up perhaps your most talented player in terms of that. So, but he's definitely one of these. He kind of it's maybe not a CMC kind of situation, but maybe in that kind of same vein, a guy who's just too good for the team that he's on. There's just no prospect of this team ever getting good, and it's such a valuable position that you have to imagine people be sniffing around him. Now,
Mhm.
obviously, the price is the big thing. You know,
Yeah, because he's not
you
going to
talk about
garner.
maybe multiple firsts or something like that for a player.
Absolutely not. You're not getting that for him. One, he's a running back, and two, like you said, it's the last year of the contract. Like if you're trading for him, you're either trading for him and immediately giving him a an extension to keep him happy, and he has missed a season and a half with injury at this point, so I think that'd be pricey. Um, like I would be looking at Brees Hall as a year and a half rental, unless he works really well, because you could trade for him. He's under contract for half a year. You can tag him next year, pay him 10 million, and you have him for a year and a half, and he'd be what, 28 at that point or something like that. But like, I really like Brees Hall, but I don't see it being a CMC level kind of. You're gonna give up a first round pick for him, like let alone just like he's a running back. Let alone he's a running back who you're gonna have to pay. You know?
Yeah, no, I mean, I mean, obviously the running back thing is a big thing. The value of them is so depleted. You think
Yeah.
about the refusal of teams to draft them. You think about the contracts that people are getting. Running backs are just not valued because you just don't know how that's going. Like I certainly see the Hall with a little bit of an injury history. People are gonna think about it. But I just look at this guy. I look at his youth and I look at his talent and I look at his production on a bad team and I'm like, if a contending team or a wannabe contending team like the Chargers goes, this guy could fix all of our problems. That they might just throw
Yeah.
whatever they can at the situation, especially since the Jets may not be inclined or maybe reluctant to give up a talented
Mm.
player of that kind of talent, especially since they've injuries in that running back room already, so it's not like they have a huge amount of options for replacing him if they do lose him. So
Oh,
it's an interesting. I think it's one of all the names I've heard. It's the one where like I can see that happening. I can see him moving somewhere else. But it would be interesting to see what kind of price would be negotiated
no,
for him.
100%. And that's the thing as well, because like realistically, this Jets team, because I think he's a good player. I think the Jets should just pay him and get him for a 3-year contract for 35 million or something like that. Because realistically, the route for this Jets team is they're going to draft a quarterback, right? So you're going to want to have a strong run game to look after him. Brees Hall is good in pass protection. If you've got a rookie quarterback, then you don't have the cap issues of paying a quarterback. Like unless they're looking on the market and saying, oh, do you know what? Actually, our plan is actually we're gonna take a run at maybe the Arizona Cardinals and take a quarterback off their hands this offseason or something. I think they'd have the space cap wise to use them. I think it'd be silly for them to trade them, but I also think I'm with you 100%. If I'm the Chargers, if I'm the Houston, geez, like frankly, if I'm the Chiefs, I'm kind of eyeing this up and going, I wonder what the price would be because I think he'd be great to add into a lot of teams. Let me see. Who do I like to look up? Well, will I just go for the big crazy one, or will I hold that off to the end, Sean?
No, go for it. Go for it.
Okay, here's my big crazy one. We have just seen probably their best performance of the year so far, or at least the one that reminded me most of them at the height of their powers. Uh, and what that says to me is this is a headache that's surplus to requirement. The Philadelphia Eagles put up 38 points with AJ Brown not on the field last week. AJ Brown is bitching and moaning in the press all the time, has made it clear he's not happy being there. He is an incredibly talented player. We can see the value he brings on the pitch, but he wants to be the focal point. He doesn't like this weird, like non-traditional offense thing that they're doing from time to time in Philly. He wants to be the superstar wide receiver one in the room, uh, and I think the Eagles would be able, and this is a weird thing to say for a team that is, contending for a Super Bowl and looks to be in that kind of form, from time to time at least, if it, although there are some hiccups. It's a weird thing to say that they should consider selling, but I think they could get a king's ransom for him. And I'm going to tell you who I think it's from. I think
Oh,
the
this will be interesting.
Buffalo Bills are in dire need of a wide receiver one, and that could push them over the edge. It gets them out of division, so they'd only face each other if they got to the Super Bowl, which would also be a hell of a storyline. The Bills are set at a lot of other positions. They've got long-term contracts in place with people. They can find the money because they've got a lot of rookies there as well. They've got aging defensive players that aren't performing that they can cut to save space. I think they would be potentially willing to give up a king's ransom. Like what you were talking for Brees Hall, I'd be thinking that for AJ Brown because you're probably looking at like taking him to retirement, right? Like he is 29, 28, 28, so he'll be 29 next year. So if you took him and you gave him a 3-year extension. And the thing is, like, he's already been extended, so it's not like it's going to cost you a ton of money. Like, he's going to have a lump of money in offsets from the other one. But like, you give him a 3-year, 4-year contract. That takes him to age 33. He gets another bite of the apple. He's the big dog on campus. In Buffalo, like he is their WR1 full stop. So, yeah, I kind of like it. I'm not sure they'd have the guts to go through with it, because it is weird in a Super Bowl kind of year to be getting rid of a WR1. But I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. You're just getting vibes.
I mean, it is the thing that when you look at what who the Eagles have in terms of the passing game and Devonta Smith and even Goddard and the use of Saquon. I mean, it's not like I mean the lot not having Brown obviously would be a huge loss in terms of talent, but there are teams that can that like for example the Vikings would die without Justin Jefferson,
Hmm.
but it's not like the Eagles. You feel their entire offense will collapse without having AJ Brown there, and if they and as you say they probably could get a very good price for it. I mean, it's just like to me though the question with something like that is what price tempts the Eagles. I mean, it's either the situations you say that Brown is so toxic in the dressing room, and that is very much could be a possibility because every single story that comes out of the Eagles locker rooms is about various people fighting. So it's quite possible just removing one of them might ease things up somewhat. But you've got a team that you just won a Super Bowl. They are stacked on both sides of the ball. It's not like they're going to be thinking even remotely about rebuilding or moving on from players like even their star quarterback is still quite early in his career. It's very difficult to what does a first round pick really give them, other than maybe try to cycle through a couple of defenders in the future or an O line or something. So it's not like they need the draft capital all that much right now. So it's like what tempts them in that sense, other than just wanting to get Brown out of the building, would be
I
my
think,
question.
yeah, like, well, I think it's a long term look for the team, right? Because I think it's looking at this current iteration of the team and how he's sitting there going, yeah, look, we're good and we're good enough with or without him to be contenders this year. But what does next year look like, right? Like your superstar running back is a year older. Dallas Goddard is probably like he's already long in the tooth. Like we'll kind of see what the roster looks like. They look at their defensive side, which has been less good, and they need an influx, particularly along the D line and stuff, to get that rotation stuff that they used to do back again. Like I don't know, it's just more like it's a bit out there. I know it's a bit out there, but surplus to requirements is a pain in the arse in the locker room. They could get a lot, like maybe a first and a second, first and two thirds, first and 2 seconds maybe for him. I think the only thing that might cause an issue would be the money because I don't know. He got a big signing bonus when they re-signed him, so how that works, how the offsets would work, and so on are a bit difficult. But like he's cheap, like, and that's the other thing that the Bills would be paying for. He's cheap. He's averaging. I think a cap hit of about 25 million a year for the next 3 years on his current contract. So like he's cheap for a wide receiver one. I don't know. I don't know. Just an idea. Okay, you hit us with another one then.
Yeah, well, I don't want to pick a specific player, but I do want to maybe highlight one thing that is an interesting thing to look out for in this. So, in this situation, so obviously quarterback is the most valuable position in the league, and you'll always there always will be teams looking for quarterbacks, and I just took a look at the market there and like who's going to be available for quarterback, and who's likely to move, and it's just dire though. It's like this may be the one year where we don't hear an awful lot about quarterbacks moving, or if we do, it's not something that anyone gets particularly excited about. I'm looking at names that are being thrown out there like Russell Wilson, who's totally washed, or someone like Kirk Cousins, who I mean, I think the Kirk Cousins one, if he hadn't just had an absolute stinker, as we'll talk about in the game reviews,
Yeah.
might be someone that the teams might sniff around because he's obviously not getting back to the QB1, and he should. He was the last time he was playing. He was serviceable. I think he's maybe on the down slope. There might be an interesting one there, in that the Vikings, you start to think about, could they, bring put the band back together for one more year because it's just not working
Hmm.
otherwise in the quarterback department. Obviously, the Bengals would have been the big team looking for them, but it feels like they have their stopgap now in Flacco. I mean, the other one would be someone like, would the 49ers look now towards quarterback? But they seem to believe that they can just make it work with the Purdy Mac Jones thing. Just have a serviceable guy in there and just make it work around him. So it's an interesting one because usually it's where the biggest splashes tend to happen is in the quarterback, but it just doesn't seem to be either, too many competing teams who are particularly weak in quarterback and might need to upgrade, and there aren't that many players who are riding the bench right now, which would be a good upgrade for anyone. Um, Other than, I mean, the Vikings would be the one team that might have some aspirations towards getting into the playoffs, but they just do not have a quarterback who can get them there. But then it is the question of, are you going to go back to your ex in Cousins, because it doesn't seem to be much better out there, unless the kind of situation where Brock Purdy comes back and maybe someone decides to steal Mac Jones away, or people like Jimmy G are still out there, although they're not getting much playing time. And you think about the Baker Darnold, even Danny Dimes thing. You put them you put mediocre quarterbacks, or look what people who look like mediocre quarterbacks, in good places, they tend to get better. So maybe there's someone out there
Hmm.
that they can gamble on. But it is interesting that there's no name that sticks out to me right now other than Cousins to the Vikings, which would be that's a thing that I could see happening and could make that team better.
Yeah. It is a good time to be in the market if you're looking at a tight end, though. There's a good couple of those that are probably sitting out there available. If you want kind of big names, maybe a little bit longer in the tooth, I'd say Mark Andrews is available for trade from the Ravens at the moment. He's kind of, he's losing he's losing ground to their younger tight ends as well. So he might be available. David Njoku is probably available as well. Apparently things are not very good in the locker room down there, and so he's kind of looking for a way out. Or if you want a little bit maybe younger but coming to the end of a contract, Chiga the tight end for the Tennessee Titans, I think would be a good pickup. He's been very productive, kind of a move the chains kind of guy for them for a while now. So like yeah, I think that'll be good. The one that I've got an eye on as a partially Chiefs hat on here and partially just because it's very intriguing because some of these dynamics can tell you a lot about where a team thinks they are as well. I want to see what happens with the Dolphins because I think there are 3 or 4 players on the Dolphins that people would be interested in trading for. But if they start to do the sell off, that it's not like the season's going anywhere, but it just locks in how much they're just like they're over the McDaniels thing. So defensively, Jalen Phillips, the edge rusher, is available, and people like his upside. He's still quite young. He was only a draft pick in 2021, so he's only 3 years into or 4 years into his career. So at this point, uh, and he would probably be available. He's a good pocket disruptor. He's had good like sack and pressure numbers over his career so far. Not mind blowing, so it wouldn't cost you a ton, but so there, the other one would be Bradley Chubb, who's obviously there, was started his career over in Denver. Hasn't really had the impact that they would want. over them. I'd say he's probably more of a ceiling on what he could do, but he'd be a good guy to be able to stick on a line or stick on the edge and set it for you. Like, and I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see the Chiefs looking at maybe a Bradley Chubb kind of move. But equally on their offensive side, Jalen Waddle is sitting out there. Tyreek Hill, look,
Mm.
that ship sailed because he's injured and he's almost certainly getting cut, so he's just going to be available to pick up next year. Jalen Waddle, I don't think they want to trade him because I think they need something to attract a coach to that place afterwards. But like, he's a good receiver sitting in a crappy fucking setup, and there's a lot of teams that could use a receiver. There's a lot, like, you even look at, the Steelers could maybe do with adding someone in. The Giants, although I suppose
I
with the Cam
Yeah.
Scatabo, it might be a bit of a, you know, there's no point. But if you're
Well,
looking
no, I
longer
mean, I mean,
term,
I think,
bring
I
him
think you.
in, give him an extension, and lock in having him and Malik Neighbors would make them very interesting next season.
Well, this thing about the Giants in particular is, do they still think they're live this year? Because if they do still think that they have a team worth working on this year, the loss of Neighbors and Scatterbo means they probably do need a skill player.
Yeah.
And someone like Waddle would be a very interesting kind of fit into that thing. So give someone for Jackson Dart to, you kind of, a down the field kind of guy from throw for. I think it is. I think it'll be interesting to see if the Giants make any kind of moves, because if they don't make a move, it is very much just saying, okay, this season, let's just forget about it. Let's get all the healthy players back next year, and let's make a proper go with this young core. But if they do start sniffing around trades, that does mean, and they do look for a big splash name like a Jalen Waddle, or you think maybe in a Chris Olave or something,
Mm.
that says to them that they believe the vibes era is not over and they can make it work. So that's definitely a team to look out for in terms of, are they being active, are they sniffing around, and what the rumors are, because it says a lot about what that organization thinks they're heading in the near future.
Yeah. And then defensively, other people you might be looking at, Trey Hendrickson, because he's only signed a 1-year deal, and Cincinnati are kind of, they're not really going anywhere. But we'll talk about them. They might see that there's maybe light at the end of the tunnel. Rick Woolen, I mentioned at the top, is a decent cornerback, and a lot of people want them. Alontae Taylor, the cornerback from the Saints, is probably there. Um, the Jets,
A lot of Yeah, a
I
lot of
don't know. I,
Jets.
I, I don't even know though with the Jets, like, kind of, because if they've extended Sauce Gardner, so he's probably not going anywhere. Michael Carter is so, like, I'm not. I've never been convinced on him. Like, Arden Key maybe from the Titans, that kind of stuff. There's a few guys knocking around, but like not big game changers really. I don't think. But yeah, I think keep an eye out on what your team does over the next couple of weeks, or say the next couple of days. It might be telling about where they see themselves for the rest of this season. And on that lovely note, we'll move over and look at the games from last week. So Sean, you start us off here with a very exciting, like, last gasp victory that showed that there maybe is life in the old dog yet. The New York Jets 39 at the Cincinnati Bengals 38.
Yeah, I mean, we might want to, sorry, talk about the, big up the Jets as wonderful winning the first game of the season. But watching this game, I was like, God, how it very much had that Tennessee versus Arizona vibes from a few weeks ago. I was like, how did the Bengals lose this game? Like, they were so comfortable. They were like two touchdowns up. Flacco was in the zone. The defense was not having the best of days, but the Jets just don't really have much of an offense, and you thought they'll be fine, they'll hold out, and then they just collapse. Like a fourth quarter collapse that on paper just looks like one of the ugliest things out there. They allowed the New York Jets, one of the worst offenses in football statistically coming into this week, to score 23 points in the fourth quarter, to allow them to the Jets to win 39-38, capped in the end by a kind of a trick play. Brees Hall, he might be valuable in the running game, but he might also be a backup quarterback, whereas his TD pass to Mason Taylor to wins it. So what, from a Jets point of view, a lot of things to like. I mean, we have talked about this Jets team. They looked kind of good in week one, and then it just kind of evaporated. And Justin Fields kind of being the emblem of that. You looked at week one and you thought, oh, Justin Fields and Jets might actually work. And then it came up to last week where he was basically going to be benched, except for the Tyrod got injured and he's back in. And this was definitely among perhaps his best game in a Jets jersey. 21 of 32 for 244 and a touchdown. Brees Hall, as well as the touchdown pass, had 133 yards rushing with two touchdowns. Davis had 109 all-purpose, 65 run, 44 pass, also break the century mark. So very nicely done from the Jets and their best offensive performance of the year by a mile. And I don't know, however, if that says more about how just god awful the Bengals defense was, and how much it highlights that the Bengals really have cut an awful lot of salary cap corners in order to make this Burrow Chase Higgins thing work. And part of it's the O line, as we've talked about before, and the threat that poses to Burrow's longevity in the league. But it's also they've been cheapening out on the defensive side, maybe Hendrickson aside, for a very long time, and this defense just looks completely god awful. And I mean, you think about last year, there was one of the biggest problems they had last year was that they simply could not. They were forcing their offense to score tons of points to win games, and it looks like they might have to do it again. So they defense gives up not only 39 points to one of the worst offenses in the league, but more than 500 yards of offense to the New York Jets. That stat alone says all you need to say about this particular game. It's a shame because offensively it's working. I mean, the Joe Flacco experiment, he's definitely found his mojo again. 21 of 34, 223 and two touchdowns. Chase Brown had two touchdowns, all purpose, 105 yards. Samaje P. Ryan made an appearance from,
I
from you know,
genuinely thought that he was retired at this point. I was like, oh, he's still around. Oh, that's cool.
94 yards touchdown. Jamar Chase had 91 as well. Just all around, a ridiculously embarrassing loss for the Bengals. I mean, I don't think you can really talk about anything else. They blow a 14-point lead. The blogs are news kind of news sources are full of ridiculous criticism, like throwing a lot of criticism on Zach Taylor and his men. Going three and out by using pass plays and try to run the clock and stuff. Just kind of stupid shit that a team with vague aspirations of winning a Super Bowl at some point in the next 5 years, they just need to change their head coach at this point. I think it's really obvious that that's what needs to happen. For the Jets, I mean, I don't know if it really augurs that much in terms of their season. I guess they've gotten the O and the worry of 0 and 17 off their back, and I guess Aaron Glenn gets a win and at least a week of reprieve from the chopping block, and maybe morale takes a step forward. And Justin Fields, if he can play like this, they have a chance of maybe winning a few more games. But I think the bigger story here is the Bengals blew it more than this can be seen as a turning point in the Jets season.
Yeah, like I think for me, I think it was exciting to see the offense work a little bit better. It's always great to see their owner get a big fucking finger up at him after his comments about Fields last week that the offense kind of came out and did their stuff. I do think, a game like this is another reason why they might be reticent in trading Brees Hall, particularly if they're looking at a rookie in the future. The From the coaching side, I think I agree with you entirely on the Bengals. It was hard to fathom what they were what they were doing to allow this game to get back in. But from the Jets side, something that I thought was really nice to see is we've had criticism a couple of times on this show now about Aaron Glenn's decision making. I point particularly to that, like going for it on fourth down in their own half of the field. Was it the London game where they went for it on fourth down, got it, and then decided to just run out the clock to not risk it? And I was like, what? What are you doing? In this one, he obviously has the right guys in his ears and he sees, okay, early on in the second half, we're going to start going for two here because that's our route in. We have to go for two and successfully manage it. So they're down 16 to 31, and the go for two means it's 24-31. So now within a score, the Bengals score, they go, okay, we're going to go for two again and get it now 32-38. And that's what means the touchdown with the point after gets them the 1 point lead, and then their defense manages to close it out. The concern I would have, and look, I've been the one who's been on the Flacco train earliest for this Bengals team, and he is playing well and whatnot. I would say my concern would be Aaron Glenn as a defensive coach, and he allowed this Bengals team to put up 38 points. and they Joe Flacco is not a man who moves very quickly, and they got one sack in this game, no interceptions. They weren't getting the pressure on him that they needed. Like the knock on the Bengals for the most part on their offense is that their line is not the strongest, and it was just yeah, it just wasn't happening. And they look, they played a good game. They used quick routes to try and get the ball out of the hands early to negate any pass rush and whatever. But like and the Jets are missing some players. Sauce Gardner's not on the field, even though he's only been kind of mid so far this year. But like, yeah, this was a good win for the Jets. They made smart coaching decisions at the right time to go for two. They kept their heads up throughout the game. It was good. But one, you can't be relying on a Justin Fields led team to be putting up 39 points every week. That's not going to work. And two, their defensive scheme left me severely wanting. Sam J.P. Ryan should not be averaging 10 yards a carry against any defense in this year,
It's
2025.
true. It's
Right?
true.
That's just not something that should happen. But look, good win for the Jets. He gets off the snide. Cincinnati, it's weird. They win a game that they probably were expecting to lose. They lose a game that they were probably expecting to win. I believe Cincinnati came into this game as like 7 or 8 point favorites, something like that. It was one of only two games this week that the favorite didn't win. But yeah, good for the Jets. Let's see if they can keep the energy up and move forward with the season with it. Next up, Miami at Atlanta, 34-10. Ooh, this was grim. But good for Miami, I suppose. Cincinnati, sorry, the Falcons, like the bad version, turned up this week, which is weird because it's Kirk Cousins and it's October, and that's normally like spooky Kirk Cousins time. It was spooky in the bad way. 21 of 31 for 173 yards, leads the Atlanta offense to just 10 points in this. This is an offense that has, Bijan Robinson, who had 25 yards rushing and a fumble in this one. Like it was baffling how bad it looked offensively from them. Now Miami did a good job. They just said, look, let's just key in the run game. We don't think Cousins is up to much these days. I suppose he's an older gent. He's off an injury. He's coming cold off the bench essentially. Like he's not been up to much. Um, the game plan has changed a good bit around how they want to run this offense with Penix instead of him. So it was never going to be the most developed, we'll say, offensive plan from them, but it just wasn't working at all. Kyle Pitts, had the most yards for him at 59. I know that probably shocks you, Sean, but yeah, he was their best performer.
That stat says it all, really. Yeah.
Yeah, 59 yards was their best. They had no first down on four of their first five possessions. It was just, yeah, London being out and Penix being out just meant this offense was going nowhere against a Miami team that kind of surprised in this one. Tua looked very good against an Atlanta defense that has at times shown itself to be very strong, but this was just a collapse week for it. He went 20 of 26 for four touchdowns and no interceptions. Like, bear in mind, this is a man who's thrown three interceptions in each of his last two games. Like, he is an interception machine at the moment. Waddle had 99 yards and a touchdown. Achan 91 yards and touchdown all purpose. Like, they were really kind of operating strongly. Now, could some of that be a couple of them doing little audition tapes for people who might want to trade for them? Possibly. This is their last week to get out of there. But yeah, for Miami, strong performance, better coaching, like nice defensive bits, better from Tua. It just as I say it, I don't fully believe it. I think this is just Atlanta completely collapsing and pooping the bed. Like even things like Kirk Cousins is an extremely experienced quarterback, but they have eight penalties for nearly 80 yards in this game. They lose. They've got Bijan Robinson as a running back with good backup options as well, and they lose the time of possession nearly 2-1. Like it was 38 minutes to 22 minutes in this game. Like it's just weird. Like the Dolphins were allowed to run the ball. Now, not all that effectively. They were sub 4 yards a carry in this game, but they ran the ball 37 times. Like they just said, yeah, we don't need to worry. We're up, and these guys aren't really stopping us all that much. Like it was just very poor from the Falcons, and for a team that like we'll have a week where we go, oh my God, Bijan's incredible, London's incredible. These guys could win their division and really cause someone a headache in the playoffs. To then like follow them up with performances like this, and like I said, it is Jekyll and Hyde. It seems to just be they fluctuate between them, but like this was about as bad a performance as I've seen from them. Like just shocking, and they were at home for this one as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. the inconsistency of the Falcons is just it's mind-boggling when you start to look at the comparison of some of their performances. I mean, it was only 2 weeks ago that we were talking them up as they'd crushed the Bills. They'd held the Bills defense to 14 points, and the offense was in a wonderful place. And you were like, man, if the Falcons can do this week in week out, they might actually be a contender. And then they do this, and it's arguably not even the worst performance of the year. They still have the time they got donutted by the Carolina
Panthers, yeah.
Panthers. I mean, this is just on the list of worst performances this
If
year.
I was the FBI and I wanted to start a gambling probe, this would be where I would start.
It's yeah. I mean, well, firstly, I guess you got to give some credit to the Dolphins because we've been saying this. They have slowly been finding themselves as the season has gone on. The first 2 or 3 weeks were they're just the worst team I've ever seen, and they seem to be going a little bit of places here and there. They pulled the Chargers quite close. They were competitive and they had an awful game against the Browns last week. But this is again a step forward, and when you have Tua not making mistakes and actually making his passes, and you have the dual threat. I mean, Chan was kind of he was doing things both sides in terms of running pass, and you've got Waddle doing his thing. It does look like an offense that functions and can actually do things, but it's I don't know how much I trust this because I do think the Dolphins are still. I mean, I think they've got some bad coaching going on, and players like Tua are notoriously streaky themselves. So I'm not sure I can really back them to do much more than this. They are 2-6 as well, so they'll take quite a turnaround. But for the Falcons, I mean. Yes, you can blame the Penix thing being inactive, and Kirk Cousins is old and not the right scheme fit, but he's also an experienced quarterback who should be a lot better at this at just generating yards and getting the ball down.
And
I mean,
this
it
is his
was
time of year. October was always his time of year.
the weather is cool, but not too cool.
Yeah.
He can kind of get into it. It's a good
Maybe
climate for
maybe
a
it's
man like
just
him.
maybe it's just the age thing that, like, similar if you're doing any kind of sports or activity, it takes you a while to get warmed up. Maybe it's just like he needs 6 games, 7 games to get warmed up. And so if they just keep playing him, he'll be great in December, but they'll be playing for like who gets the eighth pick in the draft.
Yeah, if they're still playing in December, that does not say much about this season.
No.
It was just ridiculous how easy it was for the Dolphins defense. They're like, okay, let's just stop Bijan, which firstly is not an easy thing to do in a general sense, given how much vitality is. But they just found whatever they found a scheme. They found a system that kind of stifled what Bijan could do, and then there was just no momentum. Like the Falcons just could not get drives going at all. They just couldn't build on it whatsoever. They couldn't counterpunch in that sense. And there were mistakes at key moments. They did a fumble inside the red zone that killed one of their opportunities to score. But there just seemed to be just a general malaise about the Falcons. Like they just didn't really seem either to take this game seriously until they were so far behind they couldn't do anything, or they just didn't believe they were win. It's a really hard one. They should have been home game against a bad team. They should have been romping,
Yeah.
absolutely romping. But whatever, some minor setback, you have to start your backup QB and you don't have your WR1, and they're like, wow, well, we just won't bother today, will we? Yeah. So I mean, Atlanta continue to be the most frustrating team imaginable because we know what they're capable of when they're on their day, but we also know they're capable of things like this. And for the Dolphins, I mean, if they do this for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, might maybe talk about them being a decent team. But right now, I think this is more about the Falcons just being bad than the Dolphins necessarily being good.
Yeah. Next up, Sean, Chicago went to Baltimore. I think we'd all picked Chicago in this game, and Baltimore said, no, 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 we're not dead yet. 16-30.
Yeah, I mean, I did have this as my game of the week last week, and it was for this exact reason. I was like, Chicago have won four in a row. They haven't necessarily beaten any particularly good teams, but the Ravens are there for the taking. They're on a losing streak of their own. Still no Lamar. Derrick Henry is kind of looking a little bit washed. They're like, this is a perfect test for the Ben Johnson Bears, right? Can they beat up a talented team that is hurting? can they establish dominance? Can they get to this 5 wins in a row and start to look like a contending team? And the answer is absolutely not. The 4 game win streak just crashes to an absolute halt. Mostly because of, bizarre of all things, they couldn't stop Tyler Huntley. Like this is just a bizarre thing. We know the Bears' defense has a little bit of weaknesses in it, but I mean Tyler Huntley genuinely looked you really quite good in this. He had 17 at 22, 186 and a touchdown, 53 in the rush, and he was making all the big plays, making all the right decisions. It was very much like we weren't watching Tyler Huntley at quarterback. Derrick Henry got back in the groove, only 71 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns, and Baltimore gets the much needed victory. Look, rumors of Lamar being back next week means that maybe there's just a little bit of a chink of light in this darkest of seasons for Baltimore. They might just be getting a little bit healthier, getting a little bit better on both sides of the ball, and starting to develop into something. So that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on. But the more interesting thing here is just that the Bears just didn't do it at all. Caleb Williams, he had some good numbers. 25-38 for 285, an interception. But it's the mistakes that were the bigger problem, right? So his interception came when they were deep in their own territory. So basically set the Ravens up on the 9 yard line for like an easy scoring play. He had a very brutal intentional grounding penalty late in the second quarter that kind of killed a very important drive when they're trying to be competitive. The team as a whole was just making mistakes all over the place. They had 11 penalties for 79 yards. And also the thing is that when they were getting into the red zone, they weren't finishing drives. They'd only one
Yeah.
touchdown, a lot of field goals. Especially they were really in a very good place in the first quarter. They were like dominating the shit. I think they had like 125 yards to 8 yards or something in the first quarter, but they scored two field goals, and then Derrick Henry scores a touchdown, and suddenly they're behind. And that's the kind of situation they just did not take advantage of their opportunities, and they allowed the Ravens, the very much hurting and in a bad place morally, in morale wise,
Well,
with
see, I was gonna
Tyler.
say there's a difference between morale and moral. I'm like, Jesus Christ, is Ray
Well,
Lewis back? Allegedly,
like
allegedly. Sorry, just to cover ourselves from a legal perspective. Allegedly.
Yeah, so the Bears were up against a team that was there for the taking. You thought, and they allowed them to build the confidence, and then they allowed them to kind of do what needed to be done to win. So yeah, I guess we have learned that this Bears team is not quite at the races yet, and that 4 game win streak was more about beating up bad teams. And so we don't necessarily the Ben Johnson experiment hasn't quite clicked into gear yet, and we still haven't seen really Caleb Williams come into his own in terms of kind of cutting out the mistakes and such like. And for the Ravens, they've got a bad record, and so they don't really have a big margin for error, and they're quite far behind in their division at this stage. But they look if they can keep this up and they get Lamar back, they'll be a team no one necessarily wants to play if they can keep this kind of form up and get back into the groove. So yeah, I guess I said at the start last week. I said this game will tell us an awful lot about these two teams, and I was right. Baltimore are better than they've looked, and Chicago are not as good as they looked, and at least we've learned those two things.
Yeah, we overlooked the cornered animal element of this game, right? That the Ravens, if they had fallen to 1-6, that's kind of it, right? Because they'd have to literally win every game from that point onwards, and it'd be incredibly tough to climb out of that hole. And the Chicago Bear team, we've been said throughout, even with their wins, we're saying they're good, they're not great, they're not quite there, but they're like they'll beat other kind of they'll beat teams they should, but like as soon as they come up against something they're not used to, they're going to struggle. The Ravens' defense has come on leaps and bounds throughout the season. I got to say, I'm impressed with what they've done, moving some guys around. Like Roquan Smith was all over the field on this one. He did great. I think 12 tackles in it, and then they got after him. They only got the one sack, but they did get a good couple of hits on Williams. And like you said, an interception and no touchdowns. Like their secondary did its job in this one very well. But some of that is, as you say, just lack of effectiveness in the red zone from the Bears. I was just going through their early drive charts, counting out like on their first drive they had one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight plays in the red zone and had to settle for a field goal on the next drive. They didn't get there, but they had four, six plays within 25 yards. Like it was just they needed to be converting those for it to work, and it just wasn't there for them. They were sloppy. My big takeaway is why the fuck did we watch Cooper Rush for 2 games? Like, I really just like, look, I know Stu Huntley maybe not the biggest name in the game or whatever, but like he runs this offense so much more effectively. Like he's a 6 year vet. He's used to the system. He can do the. He's not as effective as Lamar is, but he can do the running stuff a little bit more effectively. Like, you see it in the numbers, like you said, he's a touchdown, 186 yards. He also puts 53 yards on the ground on 8 rushes. Like, that means you can run the offense that you want to run with this team. I was going back through the previous games. Like Cooper Rush was 72 yards with an interception and no touchdowns against the Rams. Cooper Rush was 173 yards and 3 interceptions with no touchdowns against the Texans. Like, why were we watching Cooper Rush for 2 games? It does mean that look, they've got a clear setup for the backup afterwards. If they have Jackson back this week, they're far more exciting. Henry isn't as explosive as he was. Like I said, like his long in this one was only a 10-yard run, so he's not breaking loose, but he's still hard to bring down. He still got his touchdowns. He did the work. Um, it wasn't overwhelming from the Ravens. I'm not suddenly looking at them and going, "Oh, these guys are real contenders," but like they've they've plastered over a lot of the mistakes and the holes that they were having at the start of the season. They stopped playing Cooper Rush, which was a big plus. And Chicago are a young team. Baltimore are, even though they're underperforming versus previous years, a defense that is being replicated around the league for a reason because of what it can do to confuse younger quarterbacks, because of what it can do to disguise where pressure is coming from. And they did that effectively in this game. Even though they didn't get the sacks, they got the pressures, they forced the incompletions, they stopped the touchdowns from happening. Like it was good. I don't think it's going to play against a better team than Chicago quite as well. But you add Lamar in there, you add another week of kind of development because they're on an upward trajectory. Yeah, I could definitely see these guys being spicy. And it's all coming back to what we said, Sean, at our quarter poll. I still have the Baltimore Ravens winning this division. The Steelers are starting to fall back a little bit, as we'll talk about in a second. And do you know what happens in December, Sean?
It's Ravens Steelers twice, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, Ravens Steelers twice, baby. And to top it all off, it's not just that. It is the 7th of December. The Ravens are at home for the Steelers, right? And then on the 4th of January, sitting at Acrisure Stadium, the Ravens are at home hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers on week 17 in a game that will almost certainly decide who's going to be winning that division. I guarantee that's what's going to happen, and it's going to be great crack to watch. But yeah, good stuff from them. I still don't think they're necessarily at the level of the other upper teams, but this is a strong win, and hopefully with Lamar back, they can be a little bit more exciting. Green Bay Pittsburgh up next, 35-25. Jordan Love goes 29 to 37 for 360 yards and 3 touchdowns. Very impressive performance, made even more impressive by the 20 straight passes completed that he did at one point. There's a super cut up of it on NFL YouTube, and it takes like 5.5 minutes to go through them all. Like it's just very because the thing is like it wasn't just like, oh, I'm just gonna keep throwing like 2 yard outs. It was proper throws, and it was very impressive. Rodgers did pretty good on the other side as well, 24 of 36, 219 yards and 2 touchdowns, but is unable to complete the full set. So I didn't realize this going into it, Sean. If he had won this game, it would have meant that he had completed the full set and would have beaten every NFL team. I
Mm.
believe there's 2 other players that have done that or something along those lines. Because obviously years back there wasn't as much trading and stuff. But yeah, it was just very impressive performance. And
But I mean, that Rogers stat is one thing, but he's also, it's the converse thing. He's now lost to every team in the NFL except two of them,
ah,
the Raiders and I can't remember the other one.
oh
So
well, he's safe so. Um, he's all right. That ain't happening. Well, it depends, I suppose. He could go for another job after this one, but Pittsburgh just weren't able to keep pace with this. Green Bay racked up the yards, 454 yards total in this one. Big day for Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft is a great player, I gotta say. I've been hearing more and more like defensive coordinators and head coaches talk about how he's such a pain in the arse to deal with because he's so big and he can block. He's basically like I believe the quote that was used was, he's like George Kittle if he was bigger and faster, which is quite a horrifying concept if you think about it. But yeah, Kraft had 143 yards and two touchdowns. Watson gets 85 yards on his first game back after the ACL. It was very impressive from Green Bay, looking just like the team that they had wanted to look like at the start of the season. It helped that I imagine they all played about 15% more aggressively because they were hitting people in those god awful fucking uniforms. Pittsburgh's throwbacks, like, oh, those need to be relegated to the
Yeah,
bin.
you
Like
thought
they
the
were,
B was bad, but this is
yeah.
next level.
I was sharing in the chat group afterwards. It looks quite like the Weyland Yutani logo from Aliens and all the Alien franchises. It's just a bad look. You don't want any part of it. But look, yeah, he took a couple of sacks in this game. The defense did get home quite as much, but three sacks, like minus 17 yards in it. But they were in his face. They had five QB hits as well. Rashawn Gary getting two of those sacks for them. It was an impressive performance all round, and it did feel very much like they kind of had it in hand. I think once we were in the fourth quarter, it was getting close. They got it back within 3 points at that stage, but then it just kind of stalled for them. Like they fall to it's 22-19. Well, I suppose they're leading up to then. Then the touchdown goes in for Green Bay. It's 22-19. And you said, okay, that's fine. Look, our offense is moving. We're doing well. We just need to keep the foot on the ground. Your next drive is three plays for negative 3 yards and a punt. You go, oh, okay, but that's fine. Like, we'll get the ball back. The guys come back and score a touchdown. Then you're minus 9 yards and a punt on your next drive. You go, oh, look, it's difficult, but we can still do it. They score a field goal, and on the next drive you fumble it on the second play from scrimmage. Like it's just a collapse. There's very little else you can say about it. It's just a collapse. Yeah, the Pittsburgh defense did its job for the most part, but just the offense, it fell apart in the fourth quarter, and I don't know if it's to do with scheme. It might just be, frankly, the limitations of at a certain point, a 40 something year old quarterback is going to, start to move a little bit slower. He's not going to be able to put quite as much zip on the ball. It's just not great, and they don't have the quality of a run game to support it that they want. Like, yes, Warren is there, and Warren is fine, and he averaged 4.8 yards, but like that's massively inflated by two long runs on it. He's just not effective. Like if I was looking at a contender who might want to trade for a Brees Hall and the Steelers would be an impressive little look, but I don't think they're ever going to let him go to a contender in division, or sorry, not in division, but in conference. But like, yeah, it just fell apart in the back end, and maybe it's adjustments, maybe it's Green Bay figured out what they wanted to do, but like it's not like it was changing hugely. They didn't rely on the run game. They have, a sack, an incomplete pass, and a short middle pass. The next drive they have a run, well done, then a penalty, a sack, and a punch. Like they were just not able to get out of their own way in the tail end of this game. And Green Bay seemed like a team who kind of they probably could have done more even at that stage and put the foot in the gas even. But yeah, look for Pittsburgh back to the drawing board a little bit because these are the kind of games that you need to be in and more competitive, and you have to have a fourth. Yeah, you have to have the counter punch. You have to have the fourth quarter change up, and that seems to be missing at the moment from them. Be it a scheme thing, be it a personnel thing, be it a limitations of the quarterback thing. But yeah, I think the lack of a run game particularly started to show down the end of the fourth quarter, allowed the defense to pin their ears back and go after him, and it just yeah, it, it was rough watching, and not just for the uniforms.
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed by the Packers in this because I mean the Steelers are a decent side, even if some of their limitations are starting to become evident, especially on the defensive side now. But this was much more like early season Green Bay than the the messiness against the Browns or the Cardinals. They were just there was an efficiency to the offense that Love, I mean, you have to think this was quite a pressure situation for the kid. I mean, he's coming up against Rodgers for the first time. This is the guy who, would have been there during his early years and kind of showing him, being the big dog, and he kind of had to step up and, just basically mistake free from the kind of the passing side of things they 8 yards per pass attempt and stuff. They were really kind of motoring 454 total yards. It really felt like the offense had come together in a way that maybe we've seen this offense be this efficient, even though we were more interested in the defense in the early parts of the season. But this is the kind of thing that this is what you build championships on. Is a kind of offense that can kind of be this reliable, getting down the field regularly. And the defense, I mean, yeah, maybe it's not quite as good as we thought, but they definitely did enough here to turn this game around in the second half to kind of stifle what the Steelers were doing, especially once the Steelers, as you said, looked quite one-dimensional in terms of not really having a run game to complement what they were able to get done on the passing side of things. So for the Packers, an impressive result against what is a good team, and one that again makes me think about them possibly as contenders if they can kind of keep this kind of form up. For the Steelers, I mean, the problem I think is their defense is just not very good. Like ultimately, it doesn't really matter how much this offense is evolving and how well Rodgers fits into it, and the sense that they've got something working on that side of the ball. Their defense just seems quite incapable of because we're so used to the Steelers defense being what the in the last 5 years, 10 years, being the stronger side of that team, of being the unit you could rely on. And it just feels like the older players, some of the players are aging out in terms of they've been around for a long time. The younger guys aren't stepping up all that well. It just doesn't feel like they have it here. And in games like this, when the other offense is getting going, you need defensive splashiness. You need to be able to make turnovers. You need to be able to make stops, and it just wasn't happening. And that's what would worry anyone who thinks the Steelers might be, in a contender moving forward, is that their offense does seem capable of, if not keeping pace in a game like this, at least, battling to, 25 points against a good team. But the defense just seems not to be able to do
Mm.
their side of the bargain whatsoever, and that would be a worry for sure for them going down the line.
Yeah, you'd almost say giving a record-breaking contract to a 31-year-old like rusher on the downslope of his career was a bad call for the longevity of this defense. That particularly when you look at on either side of the ball, you have two of the highest paid like edge rusher outside linebackers in the league, and only one of them is getting a lot of cameras drawn on them at the moment, and it's not TJ Watt, who they've just given $123 million to. Yeah, the age of that defense would worry me a little bit. You're dead right. So, as we always say, all games are important, just some are less important. For those, we give you the dump off. So this week we'll start with San Francisco at Houston, 15-26. Stroud looked a lot better in this one, 30-39, 218 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception, 30 yards on the ground. Kind of looked a little bit more like rookie form him. Woody Marks was good on the ground as well, 62 yards rushing and 49 yards passing. He's kind of ramping up his use. Mac Jones on the other side looked quite iffy, 19-32, 193 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. This Houston defense is legit and has provided a blueprint for how they can win games. CMC was shut down fairly comprehensively, 25 yards rushing, 43 yards through the air. Like, particularly in the first half, San Francisco just weren't at the races in this one. Houston are going to lean into this defense. They need to be more consistent. They need to have the offense put this kind of output out there. But this is the thing, not dissimilar to what we talked about the Browns earlier in the season. The defense on this team is so good that if they can just consistently put up 21 to 24 points, they should win a lot of games, and that's what they seem to be realizing. Next up, the Giants at Philadelphia. It's Scadap over. I'm so sorry. They were just never really at the races in this one. The Eagles look like last year's Eagles. Barkley ran 14 times for 150 yards and a touchdown rushing, caught 4 balls for a touchdown as well. They had 5 sacks. They were just moving with ease. They even had the refs helping them out. There was a fumble on a tush push that the refs then blew dead once it was out. Another example of how fucking ridiculous this play is being officiated. Kayvon Thibodeau was the one who pulled the ball out, and he said to the media afterwards it was ridiculous because, as he said, if you play to the whistle. If they lose the ball, the refs blow the whistle and they let them keep the ball. If he hit him and stopped at the point that whistle went, then he'd just get a second run at it. So they call forward progress whenever they lose a ball, but not whenever. It's just poorly done, and it was a perfect example of the problems with it. This is, it was fine. It did take the air out of New York quite a lot whenever that happened because that then resulted in a score, and it was a big turnover. if they had been able to allow it to happen. From New York, like it was rough offensively. There was only 14 completed passes. No receiver was over 50 yards in this. The defense got 4 sacks and they were fine, but they couldn't cover downfield. There was 4 touchdowns passing in this game. Back to earth for the Giants. The Eagles get their revenge for the game a couple of weeks ago, but yeah, just rough times all around for the Giants. Fortunately, Kansas City 28-7. Kansas City started shaky in the first half. They had 2 interceptions, and it was 7-7 at the half. But then they came out in the second half and absolutely just destroyed Washington. They looked as good as I've seen them in a long time. Kelsey and Rice both went over 90 yards and a touchdown. Hunt had 2 touchdowns. Pacheco was averaging 5 yards or 4.8 yards a carry. They had 2 interceptions. The pass rush wasn't getting home, but they were shutting down Washington and getting the pressure on Mariota. One downside is reports now Pacheco has an MCL sprain, so he's probably day to day, maybe week to week, depending on the severity of that. But we'll see. The rush game hasn't been the strength of them this year. Mariota was serviceable in this game. Their run game was absolutely shut down. McLaren was back from his injuries and got a touchdown, but he has re-aggravated that injury again. Kansas City looked scary. Washington was spooked. I like this stat for the last 6 weeks. The Chiefs are 5-1. The Chiefs defense are allowing an average of 12.8 points a game, and their offense is scoring 29.3 points a game. That should be concerning for other teams moving forward, but we'll see if it holds up when they come into the Bills next week. Minnesota at the Chargers, 10-37. Heavily injured Wentz struggles in this game. 144 yards, a touchdown and interception against a Los Angeles defense that was just on form today. 5 sacks. A very poor game script from Minnesota. They only had 11 runs in this one. And we're just leaving Wentz out there to die. We got to see the other young fella in playing at the tail end who looked quite good. There's going to be some questions asked over why they had Wentz with all the injuries he had still playing. There is rumour circulating, Sean, that you might enjoy, that is the backup that was playing in this game, the young fella. The rumours are that Minnesota actually think he's very good and actually think that maybe he would look better right now than JJ McCarthy does, and that's why they didn't want to play him, because they didn't want to cause a quarterback controversy with JJ McCarthy, who they were already hiding with a fake injury. I think it's just bizarre. Herbert on the other side looked at absolute ease in this game, 227 yards, 3 touchdowns. Kamani Vidal picks up the running game very nicely, 117 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Justin Ebuguye has 2 sacks in this one. Miggins has an interception. A great bounce back for them. This is 24-3 in the middle of the third quarter. There was absolutely no contest here. Buffalo, Carolina, 40-9. What did I say about no contest? Blowout game. James Cook, 216 yards and two touchdowns on the ground. Allen didn't really have to do much in this game at all. Um, 7 sack, 1 interception day for their defense. Everything was firing well. This Carolina team was just in terrible nick. Dalton was in because obviously Young has the high ankle sprain. So he was a backup. He looks completely washed. 175 yards, and like I said, took 7 sacks. They need to start giving Dowdle the fucking ball again. This is ridiculous. Dowdle is averaging 6.8 yards a carry in this game. Hubbard is averaging 2.8 yards a carry. Why are they both getting the same number of fucking snaps? Just ride the hot hand. Ted gets 99 yards, but look, this was not a contest at all. Carolina were never at the races. Cleveland at New England, 13-32. This again, so many blowouts this week. 30-7 in the fourth quarter. May 18-24, 282 yards, 3 touchdowns and interception. He did take a lot of sacks in this game, 5 of which came from Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett looking very angry on the sidelines, having gotten the franchise record for most sacks in a game, and was just screaming at the coaching staff going, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, I'm doing everything I can. The run game worked for them. They had 35 carries for 177 yards. Hollins was his favourite target in this one. There was more Henderson fumbles in this one, but for some reason the coaching staff just can't quit him. Browns, went silly again. They did it last week, Sean. They listened to me. They went run heavy and pass light, and it worked really well. And they just did the exact inverse again today. They passed it a shitload and they didn't run it enough at all. I know they have an injury to a running back, but like that doesn't. They've got depth there. Gabriel struggles, and I do wonder if we might see another change in the Cleveland quarterback room before the end of the season, because
Sanders time.
yeah, Sanders is probably only if there's another game or two like this, I think it'll be Shador Sanders o'clock. Tampa Bay at New Orleans up next, 23-3. Jesus Christ, another one-sided one. But to be fair, it didn't feel all that all that one-sided inside it. This was sloppy but one-sided. Tampa Bay win, but they are in no way convincing. It took a Nelson defensive touchdown to wake them up, kind of. because it got them ahead. They still didn't score an offensive touchdown in the first half. They were fired up in the second half and went well there, where they went touchdown, field goal, field goal, field goal, punt, and won. But like the Tampa Bay were just not great. The defensive touchdown was hilarious. Like it was as bad as you could see from Rattler. He literally just threw it at the I believe he's a linebacker, uh, and just put it right into his hands. Then did the worst attempt at tackling I have ever seen and got bowled over as the guy went into the end zone. This resulted in Rattler being benched for Tyler Shuck in the third quarter. There was no real improvement in it. Their numbers are very similar. Shook held onto the ball a little bit more, but maybe he has a little bit more mobility. They had two fumbles apiece in this one, both teams. It was, Tampa Bay get out with the win. They look very wobbly. Tampa Bay are going to want to pull their britches up if they want to be contenders this season. Tennessee at Indianapolis next, 14-38. Like, what did you expect from this game? Let's be honest. It was 38-7 with 5 minutes left. Indianapolis were resting players throughout this game because it was so uncompetitive. Jonathan Taylor only carried the ball 12 times, and on those 12 carries, he had 153 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a receiving touchdown. Pittman had, I think, the best catch I've seen of the year, where he goes up. There's a flag coming in for a very obvious pass interference, and he goes up and catches it side-armed in his elbow as he's being swung and flipped away from the ball. It was remarkable. He gets 95 yards on 8 catches. Ward actually looked pretty decent in this game. Like there's mistakes all over, but like he was certainly playing better. The rookie DK was his big target. He caught 7 of 8 passes for 98 yards in this one. He's a nice piece on the up. So what we're seeing, which I think is what Tennessee would want to see at this point, is some young pieces kind of developing, and that's positive. And then they're not a competitive team now, but they can now go, well, okay, we've got a quarterback. DK will be one of our receivers. Like they're feeling out sections of the roster and figuring out where the rebuild needs to go, which is all you can really hope for at this point. Realistically, you want to lose your games and get a higher draft pick at this stage and sell off some assets that aren't going to be useful to you. Finally, Dallas at Denver, 24-44. One weak bump in Dallas's defense performance disappears in the thin air of Mile High. Bo Nix goes 90-29 for 247 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Moved with ease. There was no sacks in this game. Troy Franklin had 2 touchdowns. RJ Harvey kind of breakout game, even though he's not getting as many touches as he should. He had 3 touchdowns, 2 rushing and 1 receiving in this game. The defense got 2 interceptions. Like this was a comprehensive performance from Denver. Dak's interceptions also came at a really bad times for them. They just kind of stopped any kind of comeback. So one early on to set them off poorly, and then one in, I can't remember, it was the late third quarter or early fourth quarter when they were kind of attempting to mount a bit of a comeback. It just kind of killed them. Pat Surtain got injured in this game, and their defense still didn't slow down. Unfortunately, Williams didn't get the homecoming that he wanted, similar to how Dowdle did when he went down to Dallas. Williams was out talking to the media about getting back to Denver and how Denver never appreciated him. And unfortunately, he's walking away from this looking like Denver maybe evaluated him absolutely correctly if you're playing against this kind of defense every week. So that will wrap up the jump off for this week, and let's move on and look at the games for next week. Okay, Sean, Thursday night football. This is a far more interesting game than I was expecting it to be when we were filling out this spreadsheet like 4 days ago. Baltimore at Miami.
Yeah, obviously two teams with who've had very poor seasons, looking to slowly get right. Both of them coming off of you'd call them impressive wins, I suppose, if you were in that kind of mood. Baltimore, humbled the Bears, put them back in their place. There are rumors that Lamar might be back for this one, which would kind of be the last piece to get into place on the offensive side, and they're also building on the defensive side a little in terms of getting the pieces back. So things should look good for them in that against the Dolphins, who I just don't really know if the Dolphins are actually good or if they just happen to catch the Falcons in a really bad place. But better than, as we say, the Dolphins are looking a good bit better than they were at the start of the season. Tua's, if he can avoid the interceptions, he can, and he has players down the field he can hit, then they definitely do look like a force on the offensive side. But I think you have to back the Ravens here because I think they're starting to turn a corner. I think they've started to figure out what's gone wrong. They've gotten players back from injury. They're still an immensely talented team, and I think you got to back them to build up the momentum for the Bears and take the win because I just don't trust the Dolphins to be able to put the kind of performance they get put against the Falcons on a regular basis. Where I kind of think the Ravens based on their talent level, should be able to do what they did against Chicago for the rest of the season.
Yeah, yeah, I think Baltimore definitely. The Miami one feels more like a bump than the Baltimore one. Neither of these teams are performing particularly well, but I have more faith in Baltimore. San Francisco at the New York Jets up next. We've gone for San Francisco across the board. This is a tighter game. I think if Scadabo was not injured, I would be maybe citing New York Jets, obviously with the travel elements and so on. But I just don't trust Tyrone Tracy as much. He just doesn't seem quite as, brain damaged as Scadabo, and that's something I look for in my running backs. San Fran should be able to get CMC going against this, if not. Like a lot of quick out stuff, which will play to either quarterback because the Giants' strength is in their pass rush, and if you can just get the ball out quickly and efficiently, which I think they can in that Shanahan system, it'd be fine. For the Giants side, it's you're down your top running back, you're down your top wide receiver. It's a big ask for a rookie here. I know they're home and they've played well in recent games, albeit they took a bit of a battering last week. Like I think this will be close. I'm just edging San Francisco slightly because of it's a rare occasion where the injuries are actually tilting in San Francisco's favor, but it feels a little bit that way in this one. Next up, the Chargers at Tennessee. Sean, are the Chargers across the board? I guess. Oof.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've gone off the boil quite a bit recently, but they did have a relatively comfortable and a somewhat impressive offensive performance against the Vikings to kind of suggest that they're still a decent team, even if they've got a couple of problems. And ultimately, being a decent team is probably enough to beat the Tennessee Titans these days. I don't even
Yeah.
think you need to be that decent, to be honest. As you said, the Titans are building something, and they're starting to figure out who they are, but even the good pieces are a diamond are kind of a diamonds in the rough in this team. They don't really have enough talent to really call themselves a proper NFL team.
No.
And certainly the Chargers ought to be comfortable here, which definitely means they're going to need a last minute field goal to win it because that's how the Chargers season has been going. But you just can't back the Titans at this point to win
And
anything.
Dicker the kicker did miss one last week, so it's starting to seep in. Minnesota, Detroit up next. We go for Detroit across the board. Look, Detroit are in flying form, coming off a bye, healthy, explosive on both sides. Minnesota are not. There's just very little. I suppose your positives for Minnesota is probably the return of JJ McCarthy. You got to hope that maybe he's gotten better over the period since we saw him last play because he pre-injury he was not playing particularly well. Their defense has not been performing massively well, given that was kind of a calling card for them last year, and this is a multifaceted attack from Detroit, who are also at home in this one. I would imagine this probably has one of the largest spreads of all the games this week. Like Detroit have to be favored by a country mile in this one. But yeah, look, maybe Minnesota have just been secretly, training JJ McCarthy in this period where he's pretended to have an ankle injury and he's now going to come out and be the second coming of Peyton Manning or something. But even then, I'm not sure they got the dogs to do it. Atlanta at New England next. We've gone for New England across the board, which is an interesting prospect, given Atlanta were very bad last week, which normally swings to being very good the week after. But Drake May is looking great with New England. Their offense is purring. They need to just sellotape the footballs to their running backs' hands to try and stop this fumbling stuff. But like they're at home, they're a quality team. They're still leading their division. This is an Atlanta team that is up and down, has superstars. But as we saw last week, if you just focus in on one of them in particular, that'll probably shut down a lot of what they want to do. I'm presuming that we're looking at having Penix back this week and maybe London as well. I haven't got confirmation of that yet. If they're in, it'll be a bit more of a back and forth game because I imagine that Atlanta will kind of be able to find some bits of space in this New England defense that is good but not great at the moment. But I think we're fairly happy to back New England at home to win this one. It's nice to be able to get back to saying that about your team, isn't it, Sean?
Oh, it's wonderful that it's a good time to be a Pats fan again. The
Yeah. We got
excitement is back.
we got a battle of like some of the classic Tiffany franchises of the NFL. Indianapolis at Pittsburgh, Sean. And you are bet into Pittsburgh this year. You're backing them again. Me and Ronan backing. Is it just because you were so like badmouth pissy about them in the off season that you're like, I'm gonna make it up to you, Mike Tomlin. Please, I'll pick you every week.
Okay, so firstly, this This is my pick of the week. Again, it's kind of the same vibe as last week, where last week I was like, "Are the Bears for real? Are the Ravens really that bad?" It's this time of season is like when you figure out if teams are for real or not, and this is a very big test for the Colts. Yes, they're 7-1. Jonathan Taylor is just yeah, a machine at this point. Danny Dimes has found his home. Their defense is pretty solid. They've got wide receivers who've suddenly realized that they actually have talent. It's a very good time to be a Colts uh, player and Colts fan. But let's be brutally honest here. Have they really beaten anybody? The two big wins that we can give to the Colts so far are week two against the Broncos when there was a retaken field goal madness that kind of got them to win, and then they beat the Chargers. And if, the Chargers are not a team to be hanging your hat on. So I think this again, it's a road game against okay, maybe the Steelers aren't as good as we thought they would be, and certainly as we said, their defense looks got a significant weaknesses, and you would be worried about what a high caliber offense could do to this Steelers defense, but they're still their division leading team. Aaron Rodgers is a good a very good quarterback in quite good form. The offense is ticking. I think this is going to be a challenge. I think this is going to probably be the biggest game the Colts have played this year in terms. If they win, it's a very big game in terms of seeding. It puts them 8-1. It really establishes themselves as not just a good team but a championship team. So I think there's a lot of pressure on this Colts team, and I don't know. I just kind of have a feeling. I looked at this and I went, on paper, given these teams' form, it probably is you'd think it's going to be an Indy win, but a part of me just kind of feels like this is going to be a game they're going to get stuck down in. I think Tomlin is going to be hurting that his team is not quite performing at the level they need to. He's going to have a plan. It's still Danny Dimes. He might be playing the form of his life, but this guy has got a few mistakes in him. If they can induce him, maybe the Steelers' defense can kind of find their form a little bit and cause problems. Because I do think on the other side of it, I think Rodgers will have an ability to kind of take what he needs to take from this Colts defense. So it could be a shootout, or it could be kind of a tense kind of 25-24 affair. But I just have a feeling this game's going to be a lot closer than we think it's going to be on paper. And I just think Pittsburgh home field advantage, Colts playing a really big game for the first time this season, and the question of are they true contenders or not finally popping up. I just feel the Steelers are going to edge this just about,
Hmm.
and to put the Colts back in their box just a tiny bit.
Fair enough. I think Indianapolis are going to win this by two scores. I think they are going to
Well, if they do, then
exert their will.
absolutely I will board that train. If the Colts win this game by two scores, I'm like, okay, they're going to the Super Bowl, so
No, no,
let's
no,
get on
because
that
then
train.
in 2 games later on the 23rd of November, they're going to get the shit kicked out of them by the Chiefs. But yeah, but they're still going to probably get the one seed because their schedule is a beautiful schedule to have when you've only had one loss so far this season. Yeah, sorry, but my rationale for the Indianapolis being able to do it is their starters effectively got a bye this week. Like, I discussed it there. Like they only ran their starting running back what 14 times because they didn't have to bother. Like they're going to be well rested. I think they've went into Denver and beat Denver, who are a harder hitting, faster, younger version of this Pittsburgh defense. I get what you mean, John, and I know that they have this one circled and Pitt be looking at this going, this is big for seeding, this is big for everything, and they're coming off that annoying loss and so on. But I just think Indy are going to roll. I think they're at the height of their powers. If this was happening later in the season, if this was happening like late November, early December, I would maybe be looking at Pittsburgh and be like, yeah, the home field advantage is more of a thing then. It's colder, it's tougher, it's all that kind of stuff. Whereas I just think Indy are going to be able to walk it, but not walk it. I think Pittsburgh will get stuff on them, but I think Indy are just going to be okay. Pedal to the metal time. Let's see what we can do. Can we put up 45 points? But I'd be happy to be wrong now. To be interesting. I would very much like Indianapolis to get another loss if they could. That'd be real helpful. Thanks. Denver, Houston's up next. Is my pick of the week. Yeah, yeah. That's right, listeners. None of us picked Kansas City at Buffalo. Yeah, yeah. See, we're the thinking man's podcast. Um, Denver Houston, I think, is an interesting one because Denver played very well last week. They played one incredible quarter the week beforehand. Their defense is good. Their offense is hit or miss, but has streaky periods of goodness. And I don't think their performance last week against the Dallas Cowboys defense is a true reflection of what this offense is. And that's been the question that we've had. Not to riff or steal your point from your one, Sean, but like this is the kind of figuring out where they're at for me. Not that I think Houston are a very good team top to bottom, but I think Houston are an incredibly good defense. And I want
Mm.
to see what this Denver team looks like on the road playing against a good defense because they were shut out by the Giants, who are not a good defense for 3 quarters, and then figured it out. They scored 30 something points there last week, but it was, Dallas. Like the whole theme of Dallas this season is we can play offense, but we sure as shit can't play defense. So I want to see what this Denver team looks like up against a Houston team. And what I mean by see that is really, really kind of drive into it. Like it's not just going to be oh well, they won by 15 points kind of thing. Because I think Denver win this game, and we all think Denver win this game. It's to see, are they winning this game because they're able to sustain drives and do things against it, or is it that their defense is getting them good field position or their special teams is? Because Denver should win this. They're the strongest unit. That their offense is better. Their special teams are better. Their defenses are a push, maybe slightly erring on Houston's side, depending on obviously Greenlaw should be back from a suspension and stuff, so that'll help them. But I think we're going to get a real sense of whether this Denver offense will work or not against this Houston team in a way that we haven't for the last couple of weeks. And that's what I'm interested in keying in on. So that's why it's my pick of the week. And yeah, I think it'll be a fun one. Sean, tell us about Chicago at Cincinnati.
Yeah, important game for both these teams. Obviously, the Bears kind of brought back down to earth, and we've kind of got a sense that they're maybe not at the top table yet. But the Bengals' defense is appalling, and if Ben Johnson wants to kind of develop his Spurs or help his young rookie quarterback find his feet, this could be an interesting game to kind of try some things out and see if they can get an explosive game out of him. Um, but honestly, the Bengals just have to win this game, right? That
Yeah.
if they do have this aspiration of holding out in contenderness long enough for Burrow to come back and give them a shot at this, they're 3-5 right now. They threw away a game that they shouldn't have thrown away last week. If they let this one slip, I think their season's basically over. And I think Flacco has shown that he's clicking in his offense. They've got an awful lot of good things going on the offensive side, and the Bears do have some defensive weaknesses. So I think this could be a high scoring game, and it's going to be interesting to see if the Bears can compete in a shootout. Because that will give us an awful lot of information about where Caleb Williams is as quarterback and where the Ben Johnson system is from an offensive point of view. But I just trust the Flacco and the various pieces the Bengals have in terms of skill positions just a little bit more than what Chicago can offer offensively. And in a game where both defenses are a bit iffy, I think that'll be the difference. So myself and you have gone for Cincinnati, but Ronan has picked Chicago. I can see the pick why you would go the other way, but I
Yeah.
think the Bengals, because they have to win, and because they're slightly better as an offensive unit, I think you've got to back them here.
Yeah, next like look, since Flack is in the building, they're scoring in the 30s. Like it's good. Their defense will need to step up, but like they can definitely score on offense. And we've seen this Bears defense isn't all that stuff. Just to what you're saying about the Bengals, yeah, like you're dead right. They need to rack another win. They're only a game back from the Steelers currently, but like they're after this game it goes Steelers, Patriots, Ravens, Bills, Ravens. So obviously, Steelers, Ravens are in division, hugely important games. But like that's a tough run, particularly given you're expecting to have Jackson back and everything. You need this win because in the Steelers, Pats, Ravens, Bengals, Ravens run, you need to minimum win 2 or 3 of those games, right? To stay in the running in this one. So yeah, like if they lose this, they'd have to win all of those essentially. So yeah, this is very much a must win for them. Carolina, Green Bay next. We've gone for Green Bay across the board. Why, you may ask? I don't think you're going to ask that because we just talked about it. Green Bay are really good and playing really well at the moment. Carolina can't figure out that one running back gets twice as many yards every carry, and they should just give the ball to them more. Carolina, their positives are going to be, I imagine they will use Dowdle more and use the hot hand, which will help them. You would hope that you might see Young back, although it was a high ankle, so like they won't rush him back, I don't think, particularly not for a game against Micah Parsons, given what their line is doing. I would expect Green Bay to be able to handle this quite handily. Carolina's only hope is essentially get the run game going and keep the ball out of their hands, play possession football. But even then, Green Bay have a good defense; they can score quickly. It's hard to look past Green Bay at home in this one. Into the late window, Sean, New Orleans at the Rams. We've gone for Rams across the board. We're looking at the new quarterback and we're shucking our shoulders.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, if Rattler was starting, I think it'd be a lot closer game. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean Rams are doing quite well, both sides of the ball, offense clicking, defense looks a lot better than we thought it would be. They're just coming off by. They've had their London holiday where they barely had to turn up to beat the Jags. They're going to be in a good place, and the Saints seem to be like not just passively tanking anymore. They seem to be actively tanking, and certainly putting Tyler Shook out there is just a bad idea. I think Rattler could pull something out of this offense. I just don't think I've ever seen Tyler Shook give me a reason to believe that he's an NFL caliber quarterback. So I just think the talent differential here is so humongous. I think the Rams are rested. I think they're motivated. I think the Saints have very little positive going for them, other than maybe Alave whatever will want to put himself in the shop window for a trade or whatever, or Shaheed tries to show off a little bit more. I just can't see the Saints are going to be able to keep pace against the Stafford machine on
Mm.
offense and a defense that's looking quite good. So I think the Rams clear favorites here and they should win comfortably.
Yeah, unless they know something in house that Shook is better than we thought, because I guess was what we've seen is him thrown in at the tail end of a game rather than necessarily them having a plan for him. But equally, like we said, I'd be amazed if by game time if all of the Saints roster are still on the Saints roster. Like I imagine oh, we don't have a running back anymore. Okay, put Taysom Hill in or whatever, like But yeah, hard to look past the Rams. Jacksonville at Vegas up next. Me and Ronan have gone for Jacksonville. Sean's gone for Vegas. This is a buy versus buy game. These are the all rested special. These teams are calm. Collected, their bodies have healed, and they're still going to put up a very, very bland affair, I would imagine. Jacksonville are looking to kind of turn it around. They had a brief period there around week 4 to 6 or so where they started to look like, oh, these guys could be contenders, and it all fell apart again. They're going to hope to have taken that bye week and got it all back aligned and get themselves moving. Vegas on the other side are, still out at sea. They haven't really figured out what they want to do on offense. Like when we last saw them play, they had given up on the game with 2.5 minutes left in it after getting utterly trounced by the Chiefs. This is a different prospect. Jacksonville, to them, will look like a team that may be ripe for the picking. If Vegas are to win a game this year, this one will be circled as one of the potentials. But I just think the talent on the Jacksonville roster is so much more than there is on the Vegas roster. Like Vegas is just going to be handing the ball off a lot to Genty, and we've seen that maybe the quarterback has turned back into a pumpkin, and they may be looking at other quarterback options, albeit that they're thin on the ground in Vegas at the moment. Jacoby Myers is apparently rediscussing wanting to be traded out of there and so on. Like there's just not a lot going on in Vegas. This will be a grim game. I imagine Jacksonville to edge it, or possibly this is one of those ones because Jacksonville are famous for this coming off a bye or coming into a game like this and like battering a team, and everyone suddenly goes, "Oh, maybe they figured it out," and then the next week just go back to being terrible. So we'll see. I can see Sean why you're picking Vegas here. Like it feels like a game if Vegas are to win one or two games this year, this would be one of them. But I would just advise no one to watch this game. Frankly, it's they'll be
Well,
well
everyone will be
rested.
watching Chiefs Bills anyway, so
Yeah, it's
don't
true.
worry.
Let's move on to the actual good game in this window, Sean. Kansas City traveling up to the Buffalo Bills. We've gone for Kansas City across the board.
Which is an interesting call
Yeah, that's an
because
interesting one to me.
guess when the last time the Chiefs beat the Bills in the regular season was?
Ooh, 4 or 5 years ago at
It was
least.
2020.
Yeah.
The Bills have won the last four games in the regular season. It's our usual, now an annual tradition of Bills beat the Chiefs in the regular season to make us think that they might actually have a chance of beating them in the playoffs, only to suffer horribly and lose by a single score. Um, yeah, I mean, it's such a weird dynamic this rivalry because they're up two very good teams always in a good place. The Bills do seem to win in the regular season, but then it just comes down to the crunch in the playoff and they don't. It's almost a part that makes me think that the Bills will win this one, but these teams are in very different places psychologically and form wise coming into this game. The Bills, okay, they crushed the Panthers, so good for them. But every time they've come up against a good team this year, they've kind of looked a little bit wobbly.
I know. Look at
Not
that game against the Falcons. Sorry.
yeah,
So,
they've dropped games against the Falcons, but they've dropped games to the Patriots. They needed a massive comeback to beat the Ravens. It's not been as much as the Bills are like winning games, and Josh Allen when he's on his form is amazing. It's very hard to, other than the walking away with it against the Panthers. It's very hard to point to a game this year the Bills have actually played particularly well in
mm,
for 4 quarters, and they're really going to need to, because, as you say, the Chiefs had very slow start to the season, so much so that people thought the dynasty was over, and the offense is cooked, et cetera, and then all it took was to get Xavier Worthy back and open up the offense, and suddenly they're looking like peak dynasty team again. Mahomes is you know looks in a very good place. The defense is increasing in its explosiveness and its ability to get things done. They just look imperious, and it's very rare to say that about, because you know the Chiefs are usually a team that peak in like week 15 or week 16 or something, just as they're getting into their playoff run. This is very early in the season for the Chiefs to be looking this good.
mm.
And so, for that reason, even though the Bills have all the history when it comes to winning in the regular season, and it'll probably be a close one, it'll probably be a one-score game, and Josh Allen will do some Josh Allen things, and James Cook might have a big game as well, since he seems to be in a good place. But there are weaknesses on this Bills defense that have been propping up all year, and the Chiefs are in the right mood to exploit that in a big way. The When the Bills are pressured, when Josh Allen's pressured, they don't play as well offensively. I think that the Chiefs will have defensive scheming. Spags will have some stuff cooked up. I just think the Chiefs are in such a much better place as a team right now. It's just hard to see how the Bills win this one, based on when they're playing. I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be exciting, but I think, despite the regular season hoodoo, I think the Chiefs probably are going to win this one.
Yeah, well, like to make the argument for the Bills, I suppose Bills are at home, which is a benefit. The Chiefs are on a shorter rest because obviously they were playing Monday Night Football. Also, effectively, Buffalo kind of had a bye last week, apart from Cook. Cook got to eat a lot, but like I think Josh Allen threw 14 passes last week or something like that. Like it was very minimal usage. So they will be fresh. They're going to have a slight problem on the defensive side, obviously. Ed Oliver's injury status is going to be a big deciding factor on kind of what they're going to be able to do at that defensive tackle spot. I think Daquan Jones is possibly injured as well. So like up you step, Joey Bosa. Now's your time to shine, I suppose. Like they've got a lot of injuries on the defensive side, and that's a problem. On the offensive side, Cook is looking really good, and I think if they're smart, they will lean a lot on him because I think if there's a weak point on this at the moment, it's on the Chiefs defense. It's the run defense at the moment. Like there's a couple of players who are out injured at the moment for the Chiefs who would have been helping there or would have been used as kind of like decoy rushers to change where the edge setting is for the run game and stuff. So like I would be leaning into the run game a lot, and I know I've said this before and about Chiefs Buffalo games like that's the solution, and I just get the sense that they're not going to take it, which is a problem. I think particularly if they go down in a game, Josh Allen very much wants to be the guy and wants to put the team in his back, and he has the ability to do it. He's an incredible player, but like yeah, I think their wide receivers are not currently a strength. Their run game is, and particularly on defense, I think our run defense is not that strong, but our pass defense has been doing pretty well of late. So like I think that's their route to success is possession, 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 lots and lots of running, keep Mahomes cold on the sidelines and just hope to hold the ball last. But yeah, should be an exciting game. Looking forward to watching it. Sunday night football, Seattle at Washington. We've gone for Seattle across the board. We don't have confirmation about whether Daniels will be back or not, and I think that would change my opinion on this one. Seattle are fun. The defense is good. Their offense is a little bit hit and miss at the moment. It feels like it's not fully in sync, but the run game is working. They're coming off a bye, they're rested, and so on. So it should be okay for Washington. You know, backup quarterback. Mariota is doing a good job as a backup, but he's still a backup. McLaren was back, and you could see his impact immediately, but he then left the field having re-aggravated that injury or possibly another injury. So we'll see if he's back. Like they're struggling with a lot of injuries, and the one thing that Seattle have very nicely at the moment is they do have the oh fuck it, why not? He's free and just throw a big giant deep ball. Washington, particularly having watched the game last week, they might have the slowest defense I have ever seen on a football field, Sean. Like they're they are quality players, but they are old and they are slow. And I think that might be what we'll see in this game. I think Seattle might just decide to have a bombs away kind of attack in this one. Do a couple of nice little kind of in breaking, slant or in out kind of route things in the 5 to 8 yard period. Get the guys moving left to right, get them kind of move in that direction, and then just start unleashing deep balls because they don't have the speed to track the guys. As soon as the guys are not are going, horizontal instead of vertical, you'll have the step on them. This could get ugly quick, I think, and they need someone like Daniels in there to get the Washington offense to keep pace. That would be my concern, and that's why I think Seattle are going to walk it. Finally, Sean, Monday Night Football, Arizona at Dallas. Wow, what a great game! I can't imagine anyone wanting to flex that to one of 4 or 5 other games.
Um, well, the good news is Kyler might be back. They
Oh,
expect
so it's
Kyler
gotten
Murray to,
worse.
to slot in, which will make the Cardinals' offense worse, as we've been talking about. Yeah, there's not an awful lot to love about the Cardinals. Their run game is kind of collapsing after the multiple injuries that they've sustained at that end. The pass game looks so much better with Jake Brisket, but is just an ungodly mess when Kyler is in there, where you just never know what you're going to get. Dallas, their offense was their strength until last week when Dak decided to just make some really terrible decisions all the time, and they couldn't get their run game going either. And their defense is seems capable of giving up 40 points a game quite regularly. So we picked Dallas to win because they're at home and because maybe there's just not an awful lot going on offensively for the Cardinals to be able to exploit the defensive weaknesses of the Cowboys.
But you
But
don't believe in Bam Knight? The,
I'm afraid I do not.
I think
I'm
he's
not
their
a.
RB1 at this stage. I'm not 100% certain.
I don't even know if they know who their RB1 is at this stage.
No.
Yeah. So Dallas, because their offense has, in theory, a little bit going about it. Got to give them the win here, but I do not expect this to be a particularly enjoyable game. It might be high scoring, but only in a very messy way. More likely, it's going to be kind of a 2017 kind of grind situation where people start to Cowboys fans get to start to slightly believe one more week before they get trounced again next week.
Mm.
But yeah, why? Yeah, the weird thing about the Chiefs Bills always being in like one of the Sunday slots as opposed to being on prime time, I do find that a little bit weird as a decision the NFL consistently makes.
Mm.
But yeah, well, there's just loads of Dallas fans out there, I suppose.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing. Like they they're always the biggest draws on the ratings, aren't they? I suppose
Mm.
just football's religion down there, and it's not clashing with church if it's on a Monday. So that's something. Like Dallas are also due to win this one because they're currently 3-4-1, and the
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the pursuit of parity must continue. Very good. Any plans for the rest of the week, Sean?
Well, it's Halloween, so I suppose we'll have to put up some decorations, and
What
we live in the sub.
deeply racially insensitive outfit are you wearing this year? I mean, you've never done that, oh.
Not me. It wasn't
Uh,
me.
no,
Other people have done
other
things in
people
retrospect.
at Bill's house and Tom's house.
Yeah, so we live in the suburbs, so there'll be lots of kids coming around trick or treating. I suppose that'll be our Halloween.
Yeah,
Um, and then yeah, that's kind of I think the big highlight of the week coming. Kind of getting a bit quieter.
very good.
Otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, I'm off to Frankfurt tomorrow, and I'm there until Friday, so I'm there for till the Halloween. So I'll actually be home after the time that I think all the trick or treaters are gone. I think I'm not getting back till a bit late. I have to go into a conference and presenting a paper, so that'll be fun, I suppose, or as fun as Frankfurt can be. And then I've got a week's holiday after that, so off to the west of Ireland, bringing doggy bit of chill out time, bit of recharge. It'll be lovely. And then yeah, it's kind of nice one. I was expecting the Chiefs Buffalo. I know it's always on that time. Like, oh, they're gonna have to flex it at some point. I was expecting it to be one that I wouldn't be able to watch, but I might just sit up and watch that on the Sunday afternoon. Then that'll be good. Make for a nice cozy in front of a fire, kind of staying away from
Mm.
the elements on the wild west coast. Sounds like a plan to me. Very good. Well, I suppose that'll wrap us up for this week. So it's bye from myself. It's bye from Sean.
Bye.
This has been all four quarters. Thanks for listening, and we'll chat to you next week.